What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about the Winnipeg Jets logjam on defense. The Jets have so many defensemen and so many guys that are probably serviceable NHLers. You know, you can decide how much you like one player over another, but they just have so many contracts on defense on one-way deals and so many guys that aren't waiver exempt. There's just such a big logjam. There's been a logjam on defense, I feel like, since 2020. And it really hasn't gotten that much better, to be totally honest with you. There's just a lot of blockage right now. I do wonder if the Jets do look to move some of these guys. They're probably going to have to, I'd imagine. But I would like them to do it, you know, kind of sooner rather than later here, guys. It's the middle of the offseason now. I know teams are waiting to sign their RFAs and everything like that. There's not a ton of movement around the league right now, but this is something that I think the Jets should be focusing on. This is something that Kevin Cheveldayoff said that he's going to make a priority, and I would just like to see him, you know, kind of, I don't know, start something here, because we had a lot of guys on one-way contracts, and I'm going to talk about all of this in just a second here and show you what I'm talking about with a visual, but it is very weird how we're at this point in the offseason and we have shedded no defensemen. You know, we've gotten rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois, brought back a really nice haul with, you know, Gabe Vilardi and Rasmus Kupari, Alex Iafallo, a second-round pick. Just such a nice package. You know, Blake Wheeler obviously bought out, so things are changing in Winnipeg, but the defense certainly hasn't. I made a little graphic here just kind of, you know, to explain what I'm talking about, because on the left here we've got the pairings that I think will start if, you know, if there was a game tomorrow. Those pairings being Morrissey DeMello, Brendan Dillon, Neil Pionk, and then Sandberg and Schmidt rounding out on the third pair. But then you look on the right, and these are the guys that we have as extras, and these are very good players, right? Like Logan Stanley, you know, we talk about him a lot not being very good. I don't think that Logan Stanley is a very good defenseman. However, you know, if he's your 7th or 8th defenseman, that's fine. We'll talk about him more in a minute. Ville Heinola, he's a guy that's dominated the AHL. He's not getting any better in the AHL. He needs to be in the NHL, make some mistakes. You know, look, he's looked good at times in the NHL. He's looked bad at times in the NHL. Will he be, you know, this massive impact player? I don't think so. I think he's going to be a very solid defenseman in the NHL. I don't think that defense is going to be his strong suit. I think that he's going to be, you know, a power play quarterback, just a really good puck mover. I do think that he is good defensively. I just don't think that he's going to be like, you know, that being his main focus. And I think a lot of people get tied up in that, right? Offensive defensemen are out there to score points, not really to defend. If you want to look for a guy on the Jets right now like that, look at Neil Pionk. He doesn't defend at all. And at times he doesn't really put up the points either. He hasn't put up big points in a couple of seasons, and he was pretty disappointing last year. But, you know, we move on here to Kyle Capobianco. He's a guy that is very replaceable. He's on a one-way deal. I'd imagine that he would be a waiver guy. I don't think that the Jets would really ideally want him over Heinola or Stanley or Chisholm. I think he's probably at the bottom of the totem pole here. But Declan Chisholm is where it gets really interesting, because now he's no longer waiver exempt. He's on a one-way contract. So you can't send him down to the Moose. If you send him down, he's going to have to pass through waivers, and I promise you, he is not going to be left unclaimed. Someone is going to take Declan Chisholm. So now this leaves you with some problems and some decisions to make here, because we know last year at the trade deadline, Logan Stanley had requested a trade from Winnipeg. That trade never happened, so either nothing, you know, materialized, any of that stuff, whatever. We don't know what happened, but Logan Stanley did not get traded. I'd imagine that Logan Stanley wants, you know, a regular role in the NHL, if that would make sense for him, his agent, everything. You know, he's not going to get paid more and have a long career just by sitting on the bench, right? So I'd imagine that, you know, if it's not with the Winnipeg Jets, if the Jets aren't going to offer that for him, he's going to want out, and I wouldn't blame him. And, you know, same thing with Ville Heinola. Heinola's been, you know, largely up and down from the NHL to the AHL, but he just has not gotten a lot of NHL games. He has shown very, very good flashes in the NHL, and at times he's looked out of place. But I do think, you know, with players like Heinola, if you look at how Jamie Drysdale was playing, obviously, you know, very different level of potential, I believe. I think that Drysdale is a far better player than Heinola. He struggled real bad his first year, but look at him now. The guy is a very good defenseman for the Anaheim Ducks, and I think that he's going to continue to, you know, rise to be that top pairing defenseman. With Heinola, I don't know if he's a top pairing defenseman, but I think that he could be a very good, you know, player like DeMello, like a guy that just makes other people better, right? Everybody in the AHL was better when Ville Heinola was on the ice, and I still think that he would be a very nice addition to any team if he's allowed to grow, make those mistakes, and become the NHL player that I think that he still can be. So now you look at those two guys, and let's say that they're the priority right now. Who do you take out from the left side? You definitely don't get rid of Morrissey, you know, he's the guy. DeMello, I doubt you get rid of him. You know, those are our two most stable defensemen. They play excellent together. I think that pairing is untouchable, you know, totally, don't even bother with it. If you look at the bottom four, however, Brendan Dillon, Neil Pionk, I think that there are some things that you could do there. I don't think that the organization is looking to move Neil Pionk. I think that he is safe. I don't think you could even move him if you wanted to with that contract and with how he played last season. I think it would be very tough. You would have to attach a ton of assets to get rid of him, and they're not going to buy him out. Brendan Dillon has 1 year left at $3.9 million. He would be very easy to move because you could move him to a contender, you could move him to a team that's, you know, just not very good, and you could get a return for him, right? If you move him to a team that's not very good, they're probably going to try to flip him at the trade deadline, play him more minutes, right? And, you know, get a bigger haul for him than what they paid for him. If you send him to a contender, they're going to just use him as a rental, and then he'll probably walk to free agency, right? So there are options with Brendan Dillon if they so choose to do that. And I think that that would be a very good move at this point because he's not in the, you know, in the future window for the Winnipeg Jets. Maybe the win now window, but I don't think the Jets are going to be winning very much games now. Dylan Samberg is a guy that I compare a lot to Brendan Dillon just in the fact how steady they are. I think that Samberg needs to grow in a bigger role, and I think he could be ready for the top four. He looked really good last season, and he was just a real under the radar rookie too. I just want to say that. I think that, you know, obviously he's not going to get Calder votes or anything, but I just don't think a lot of people took enough notice of Dylan Samberg last year. So, you know, you've got Nate Schmidt there as well, and he's just a whole different can of beans. It's going to be really hard to move that contract, and I don't know. It's just going to be unmovable. You can't move that contract right now in the cap-strapped NHL. You'd have to attach a ton of assets to it, and it's just not going to happen, right? So Nate Schmidt, probably not getting moved. If the Jets pull something off and move him, that would be like the most ideal thing that I think could happen right now, because I think that would free up a lot of stuff. If we're not a very good team moving into the trade deadline, you can move Brendan Dillon, and then maybe, you know, you have some more flexibility. You clear that logjam down the road, but right now, I do think that the smartest thing that the Jets could do is move Brendan Dillon. Like I said earlier, with his age, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be with his team long term. I think if he doesn't get traded this season, he's just going to walk to free agency with 1 year left on his deal, obviously, this year. And that's why he's so easy to trade, and that's why I think he'd have so much value. He'd be a great rental for playoff teams. Like, you know, you just think of like the Boston Bruins. Like, you could totally see Brendan Dillon playing for the Boston Bruins and other teams like that, right? If they need a guy like that, that's a guy that I believe that a lot of the contending teams are going to be targeting. So if you move Brendan Dillon, you move up Dylan Samberg, and you slot in one of Stanley or Heinola, then that kind of clears things out a little bit, right? Gives a little bit of breathing room to, you know, whichever young guy they choose. Let's say they're choosing between Stanley and Heinola. Let's say they pick, you know, whoever, either one of them. Well, the other one's going to have to get moved more than likely. Just for the sake of this video, let's say that Samberg moves up into the top four, Dillon's traded for, you know, a pick, and Ville Heinola slots into the bottom pairing with Nate Schmidt, where he's had success before, and the Jets look to move on from Logan Stanley. Stanley would then have to be shipped out, right? Would it be a trade for just Stanley? Very possible. Or would it be a trade, you know, that includes a Mark Scheifele or a Connor Hellebuck if the Jets are still looking to do that, right? I do believe that the Jets are still keeping their options open on either ends of that if they'd want to trade them or not, but I do think that it is something that the Jets have to look for, and maybe if they include Stanley in a deal like that, they can kind of maximize their assets coming back, right? If the team wants a sweetener or anything like that, I think Logan Stanley and, you know, even Jansen Harkins are a guy that could definitely fit that deal. But another one that I do think could act as a sweetener is Declan Chisholm, who has been a very good, flashy player for the Moose, made the AHL All-Star team last season. He's a guy that I think could be a real nice piece going to any team. I just think of the Carolina Hurricanes. He would look so good with Carolina. I'm a big Declan Chisholm fan, but I just don't see a route where he makes this lineup at this point in time. I don't see a world where the Jets want to put him on waivers. I do think that he'll end up being a trade chip along with, one of Stanley or Heinola, just Stanley in this instance, right? And then I believe that Capobianco is going to be like the 8th D, or he'll just be put on waivers, and if he doesn't get claimed, he'll be with the Moose, right? That's just kind of how I would like to see this go, because I'm a big Heinola believer. I'm kind of over the Logan Stanley experiment. I think Stanley wants a change of scenery, and I think if Heinola doesn't get, his shot here in Winnipeg, he's going to want to change of scenery as well. So there are a ton of possibilities. This video is probably a mess. This probably doesn't make a ton of sense, to be honest, but I just find it so interesting because this is a problem that the Jets have had for a while now, and ironically, I feel like it's even more complicated now than it was maybe, 2 years ago. It's just a tough situation to navigate. I think that there's a world where you can do it, but a lot of the stars have to align, and they have to align quick because camp starts in September. It's almost the, end of July. We're nearing the end of July now, and almost nothing has been done to the D-core except, sign Dylan Sandberg, and the Jets still need to sign Logan Stanley as I record this. He's an RFA. Do they qualify him, trade him? Do they sign him to a contract, move him? I don't know what's going to happen with these guys, right? So we'll see what happens, but I do think that there is a lot of movement to come here on the back end. But that's where I'm going to leave it. It's just been a lot of me, yapping today, a lot of hypotheticals here, and a lot of, question marks still to come. But I think it's fun to speculate on what could be happening before the season. But I would love to hear from you guys what you guys think, so leave a comment down below, your ideal defense pairings, and maybe some mock trades if you guys have any for any of these defensemen, or a deal that would include a defenseman. So again, would love to hear from you guys. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one where, maybe we'll be talking about something more fun. Maybe Gabe Vilardi will, have a 5-year contract with us. We'll see. But yeah, guys, have a great day. See you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.